Good afternoon. My name is Nancy Bui. I'm going to interview Mr. Phan Vu. We are in Orange County. Today is September 23rd, 2013. The interview will be used for the Journey to Freedom. Good afternoon, sir. Can you state your name and your profession?
My name is Phan Vu. I was born in April 1933 in Thanh Hóa province. I study in elementary school in Tuy Hòa City, Phú Yên province. But I go down to Saigon to study in the class 12 about philosophy. And a year later, I got baccalaureate, deuxième partie, section philosophy. And then I was a teacher of French at Hoàng Diệu High School down to Sóc Trăng province. But I was called to Duc Military Academy, and I graduated from this school. I had to underwent a course of training in Dũng Mỹ about the jungle, mountain, and mudding course. And then I go back to Ranger Corps to work for General Tô Thức Xứng and Lieutenant Colonel Đào Bảo Phước. And in 1975, when the government of South Vietnam fell, I was captured and sent to Xuyên Mộc Reeducation jail. I was released in 1979, and then in 1993, I went to the United States under the President Reagan policy.
Okay, so in 1975, what rank you were and where were you when Saigon fell?
In 1975, I was in school, because in 1966 I was released from the army, and I go back to school to teach French and English. And after April 1955, I was captured right at the school. They sent me to Xuyên Mộc Reeducation jail.
So can I ask, so they even arrest the school teacher and put in jail?
That's the Untitled High School in Biên Hòa province. I was captured at that school, and they jailed me about 5 years.
So, but what reason they arrest you? Because you already out of the army.
Because I was former officer, and they suspect me and CIA, and they said that when they interrogate me, they told me that I was a CIA agent. And after 5 years, they released me.
Did they give you any reason why they released you?
They put in the release paper that I was a lieutenant officer.
I see. And when they released, they didn't give you any reason why they released you either?
No, they didn't give me anything.
I see. In your opinion, what caused the war and who responsible for Vietnam War?
It's very difficult to say that. But the reason is The war started in 1960 because Ho Chi Minh and his party want to conquer the South Vietnam. To establish the communist regime, and because Ho Chi Minh was he very fond of power, so he want to conquer the South Vietnam.
So, thank you. You were in the military and you also study a lot about Vietnam War. Can you tell us what do you know about the Ấp Bắc battle and how it happened and how it ended?
Yeah, first I had to tell this. The reason, the cause of the war is, as everyone knows, that they want to conquer the South Vietnam. In March 16, I think, March 16, 1968, 62, I'm sorry. He want to start a new war. And because at that time, Ấp Bắc was a good terrain for the Viet Cong to set a trap for the American advisor and Vietnamese soldier. Ấp Bắc was composed two hamlets. The north, that's Ấp Bắc, and the south is Tân Thới hamlet. Tân Thới hamlet is about 14 kilometers from Calais district. In the north of Ấp Bắc, there was Bà Bèo Canal. In the east, there was Tổng Đốc Lộc Canal. In the south, there was a National Freeway 4. But in the west, there was 3 canals. The first one is Tân Thới Canal, the second is Nhỏ Canal, and the third one is Lan Canal. At that day, at 6:30, the second infantry battalion from government was shuttled by the helicopter 221, and they shuttled and they dropped the soldier, the civilian guard, in the open rise plain. The plain is muddy. There's no trees, but it can grow rice. And because the helicopter dropped the guard, the civil war, very near Tân Thới hamlet, so 4 helicopters was down, and many civil war were killed. At that time too, the first battalion civil guard marched up to Tân Thới hamlet. They came to the Tân Thới hamlet at 7:45 a.m. But they were stopped there because the guerrilla ambushed them, and they cannot dislodge the VC. And at 7 a.m., the Captain Lý Tùng Bá and his M113 go north. He crossed the first canal at 8, the second canal after that, and but Captain Bá and his carrier went to the third canal, the Lan Canal, but he cannot cross the canal because that terrain is very muddy. Every move, a soldier or the carrier going deep in the mud. So Ba ordered his men to wait around to cut trees and place the trees on the best fort to make the platform. So the first carrier crossed the canal. After crossing the canal, they had to tow other carrier to other side. And all the 12, 113 were at the other side of the canal. It was already 1:30 p.m. And his man and Ba reached up back hamlet. As soon as the Viet Cong saw the approaching carrier, they start to fire. And a seasoned soldier were dead. Ba suffered the first surprise attack, surprise casualty. He ordered to foxhole along the banana trees line and along the 4-foot thick dike. And they said that the Viet Cong thought that they were safe. But Ba used all the power of other carrier. And one of them trying to climb the dike. And other carrier followed the first one. And this time now, the trap set by Viet Cong was trapped by themselves. Because when the 10-ton behemoth ran over their head, buried Viet Cong down in their foxhole. So nobody can jump out of their fox to run away. So I thought that the two battalion, VC battalion was decimated. So New Sheehan described it as carnage, as butchery, but New Sheehan did describe clearly how the butchery is, the worst. But I think that all Viet Cong was killed. And in the book, Bright Shiny Light, wrote by New Sheehan, he said that the Viet Cong battalion and the battalion regional get a line to go back. They camp in the plain of Reed, and they go down there. They take it, and they reach the plain of Reed at 7 a.m. the next day. So, at that time was Neo Chien. He was at Saigon. He came to district, Calais district, the following day with Pham Xuân Ấn. Pham Xuân Ấn was first hired by Reuters in Saigon. But Nick Turner in 1964 recognized him as a covert spy from Viet Cong. And then he was hired by Time Life magazine Saigon Bureau Chief. But Nick Turner didn't report this event to the government of Vietnam. And they say that they all, Viet Cong battalion went safely to their camp. So I read this detail. I was very amazed, very surprised. Who gave him the specific detail there? And according to the book Perfect Spy, written by Larry Berman, I knew that Pham Xuân Anh always at the Chevral coffee shop they call Katina Radio. So every day Pham Xuân Anh was there and give all the American reporter the phones, the talked it story. They send them to Washington. And at that time, they get information to send to the jungle. After April 1975, Pham Xuân Anh was named VC0 spy in Hanoi. So, I think that that's all the book A Bright Sunny Light written by New Zealand was a fiction story full of garbage, and New Zealand was a dishonest journalist.
So another word you try to say is up back with a defeat for VC, but because of New Zealand and people listen to Pham Xuân Anh news, they twist into a defeat for South Vietnam.
Yeah, that's a defeat for Viet Cong, but they turned into a victory.
By whom?
By Pham Xuân Anh and New Zealand.
So what about My Lai incident? Do you know anything about it? And then what is your opinion?
Yeah, I had to reconstruct this story. That's in the 1968 Tet Offensive. All guerrilla unit from the south and some unit from unit of infantry from the north together and infiltrate into the city, even in Saigon. But they were decimated. All guerrilla units were destroyed, and all the infantry from north was damaged. But still in Quang Ngai, this region is a rice and bean area. They mean on daytime they were under the government control. But at night, the Viet Cong come back to their house to get medicine, to get intelligence information. So, at that time, My Lai was infected by many Viet Cong. And the Lieutenant Cali, the commander of the company. A company was composed of the 3 platoons. When this company come to the outskirts of My Lai, Lieutenant Cali set two platoon outside skirt on guard, and the third one entered the village. You know the number. Usually the number of platoon is about 30 per person, per 30 soldier. But usually only 75% of that number, about 20 soldiers go into the village. They went into the village, they saw nothing. They saw only the old people, toddler and women doing their daily job. Cook rice, wash their clothes, like that. And there's no male visit. Because these drafty, these soldiers were drafty, they were young. They didn't have experience about military affairs. So they come back. But as they get out of the village, they were shot. Some GI dead, some injured. And Kelly sent them back for a careful research. But nothing. The same thing. The same woman. And the GI get out. But as they are out of the village, they were shot again. At that time, Kelly, as commander of the company, he was very furious. He powdered. Who shot? Who shot? Either these women were a female a guerrilla or not. So they told his men to round up all old man, woman, and their baby into a ditch. He asked them, where male we see? But these women didn't answer. The women didn't show. So as a commander, they shoot them. So some women die with their baby, some escape. And at that time, the photographer, Ronald Herbert Lee, took 2 pictures. The 2 pictures was shown on live, and I saw that. But they retained only one of the pictures in the textbook. But in the story, Seymour Herbst said that the GI killed 504 people. But the historians say that 300 people. And they say 400 people. And at last they say, finally they say 200 people. They play with the number. But the pictures show only more than 10. So, it's easy to understand. 13 soldiers killed 500 people. That is one soldier killed 38 persons. Or one GI could not kill 30 people, 20 people. You see, they play with the number. And in that, there is a picture show that the woman was the female guerrilla. They can shoot, they can live with their husband because they are a baby. The question is, who fathered them? And where were their father? Maybe they were in underground catches or in the double wall. But the GI was young and they didn't have enough experience to find them under the ground and into the double wall. So you see that that's a very real fiction story.
So, but they did kill.
Yeah, they did kill, but nobody can retain their calm because his men died there.
Is that the main?
That's the revenge.
Yeah.
Okay, we can say the revenge.
But you know, you can kill woman gorilla, but baby, is that baby? I can saw some very young, 2-3 years old. Are they? I mean,
Yeah, that's right. But when we kill the mother, the bullet can go through her baby too. They were not unarmed, not innocent. You remember this?
Is that the 2-3 year old baby also armed?
In their arm, very very young. We can remember about the September 11, 2001. There is 19 terrorists attacked New York, New York City. And when they boarded the plane, they were unarmed and innocent. But when we die, we knew they are not unarmed and not innocent. Too late. You know that the guerrilla warfare, who kill first, alive. Who kill late, dead.
But I still, this is, you know, like this film will be shown for public, American public. They will have a hard time to understand why the children and the woman already go into the ditch. Why don't they even, you know, tie them and send them back? Or, you know, the children, 2, 3, 4 years old children. What can they harm? I mean, what can they harm the big GI?
Oh, you see now, just yesterday there was a shootout in the Marina near the Washington DC. They killed 13 persons.
How old is that person?
Well, they are very old, from 72 down to 20.
I'm talking about the killer.
The killer, 34.
Yeah, he's capable to kill people, but the 3-4 years old children.
Okay, that's the damage. That's the collateral damage. We cannot avoid to kill them. Because if we avoid to kill these women, they will be shot too. Because around there, they are VC.
So in your opinion, Carly didn't do any crime?
I think they commit crime, but involuntary. Because he's very furious. His man died there. But there is no male Viet Cong. Who killed?
Yeah, I look onto the paper quote of Carly, trial, and he did punished for his crime from American court system. So he probably did some war crime there. My question, I understand your point of view is that, you know, the number would inflame. I mean, they dozen or a little more, they grow into 200, 300, even 500, because of the press. You know, they at that time take the course of the anti-war and did that, you know, to the public, and also people, and also the Vietnam veteran at that time were fighting in Vietnam.
Yeah,
okay.
I know that. I know that, but Seymour has to know this factor. They said that the woman and children was killed. That is because Kelly was inhuman. That's the factor. But we have to put themselves into the situation. Into the situation.
Okay, so what about the Tet Offensive? And also the Easter Offensive. What you think about this general attack and the coverage from the American press?
To finish it is Me Lai incident. I call it incident, it's not massacre. Because before that, there was a Hue massacre with 3,000 plus Hue city residents. But no columnists, no journalists report that. They kept silent. Why? The GI killed 20 people. They make a big scandal. But the Viet Cong killed 3,000 plus. They kept silent. Is it justice? Is it fair? It's not fair. Now about the Easter offense. The Easter offensive was unlocked, was liberated, and then Quang Tri Citadel was retaken. But I want to insist to focus on Kon Tum battle, Kon Tum city battle, because they say that Davidson in the Vietnam War, page 712, wrote that the Vietnamese soldier cannot stop the advance of Viet Cong, and the Vietnamese soldier could not counterattack the Viet Cong without air support. Another thing, let's most say that the Vietnamization failed the crucial test because the RVN cannot stop the offensive of Viet Cong or push them back. So I want to focus on that to demonstrate that the RVN can stop them, win them, and the Vietnamization was a victory, not a failure. I have the picture about the Kon Tum city. The Kon Tum city, Lieutenant Ba, Colonel Ba, make the city as a stone point. They gather all his men into the city. So around the city there's a circle of soldiers. And outside the outskirts of the city, there's a free firing zone. There's nobody there. So the B-52 can kill them all. Now the B-52. Why I stress on B-52? Davidson said that with B-52, the RVN cannot stop Viet Cong. We know that during the Korean War, when the Red Chinese Army go from the Amur River down to 38 parallel, they advance, and division of American and division of Korean soldiers could not stop because they use a 10 Red Chinese to kill one GI, one American. So the American cannot stop them. But at the end, General MacArthur used B-52 and rain bomb. They can stop them at 38 parallel. So the B-52 were used in Vietnam to stop the mass attack. And you know, Come to city, and outside was a free fire zone. But the circle of the soldier and the safety circle, the safety circle for to guarantee the safety of soldier. But outside this safety circle was a free fire zone. But Viet Cong, General Thao, Hoàng Minh Thao, knew that that's B-52 never rain bomb into the safety circle. So they told this man to get inside the safety circle. But Colonel Ba, they prevent this by request the air command to shorten the distance. The soldier circle to safety circle, the distance was 800 yards. But now Colonel Ba request to shorten from 800 to 500 yards. Let the 500 yards to 800 yards, let the Viet Cong concentrate in this area. And when the B-52 flew, they killed them all. Next, there is another genius point. That's Ba said that when the B-52 flew into 3 stripes, the first stripe, the second stripe, and the third stripe. The plane in the first stripe was before the second jet, and the second were before the third jet. So they can kill them all. And you know, the result of this Kontum City attack was a victory. 3 VC division attacked. One of them disappeared without trace. That the Yellow Star division disappeared, and 2 other decimated, shattered. And the big consequence is General Von Yap stepped down. The General Von Yap had to step down from Ministry of Defense and replaced by General Van Tinh Dũng. So the RVN soldier can stand and win the war. And Vietnamization was a victory.
What happened to you when the war ended? You said you were arrested and put in a prison just because you were a former officer for South Vietnamese Army. But what about your family? What happened to them?
I was captured and sent out to Xuân Mộc Reeducation jail. In there, I had to go cut trees. We worked very hard. We had to cut trees. The tree trunk was sent back to the camp for lumber, and the big branch was cut into the firewood, and the rest we burn them all. And then we had to plow the ground by pulling the plow. 10 men plow, 10 men pull the plow, and 1 man keep the plow straight. So we call ourselves Speaking Buffalo. And we were fed with cassava powder and portrayed fish shows. Everyone was starving, was sick, and then perished. My wife had to sell everything. First, the furniture. Second, my Honda motorcycle, and then hers. And then electric fan, electric iron. That is a specific poverty. That's I have a daughter. She had to use to go to school. But she got a white blouse and a black pants. But over the year, the black get white. So the color inside is blacker than the color of outside. But we had to live like this until I was released. But at that time there was no job. Everyone was jobless. Right now, the same thing.
So, you were in jail. Your wife and your child were selling the belonging to live on. And when you come home from jail, do you be able to? Would you be able to find a job, or how did you live after that?
Oh, I'm fortunate because I can speak French, I can speak English, so I taught them by private lesson. At that time, there was many family want to apply the application to go to France, so I gave them private lesson. And some other want to go to United States for family reunion, so I give them English lesson. So I can live from there about 1983, 85 after that.
So look like you were living in a different regime, more regime, President Thieu, and then you live under the communists. Can you make a comparison with of your life, during those period of times?
Yeah, to be more specific, under President Diem, with my salary, I can buy 1 ounce of gold. With President Thieu, with my salary, I can buy 1.5 ounce of gold. But under Viet Cong, my salary use enough to buy food. That's all.
That's the material life. But what about your, the spiritual life, the happiness? Can you recall?
Happiness. I am happy because I try to be happy. I always say look forward. I don't like to look backward. I told my children like that, look forward. When I taught my students, I told them to look forward. Let bygone be bygone.
But I mean, during those times, can you make a comparison? What I try to ask is how much freedom do you get from the different regime?
Oh, the freedom under GM and Thieu, we are free. We can go everywhere. But under VC, life. Everywhere I had to go, I want to go, I want to move, I had to ask permission. And I had to surrender the permission when I come back. There's no freedom.
Do you want to say anything else that I didn't ask about Vietnam War, about life after war, or any debating about Vietnam War you want to express here? Can you share?
Yeah, I want to tell about the journalist and editorialist. I think that every American, when they start their work, they always say, I pledge allegiance to liberty and justice for all. But some senator, some journalists, they don't think about justice. They don't think about freedom. They are pro-communist. They make this some statement pro-communist. Why? They live in freedom. They live in democracy. Why they are free? They are pro-VC. Why? That's I cannot understand them. I cannot understand it. So I wrote a letter to Jane Fonda. I explained her. She knew Vietnam only 2 weeks. But I live in Vietnam. I know communists from the start of the war until the war ended, and after that, I know communists better than she does. So she sent me an apology. She sent me an apology.
You satisfied with that? You are satisfied with that? Apology?
Yeah, to me, I don't know about all it, but everyone make some mistake, and she knows she make a mistake. That's okay, because everyone was sinful. Everyone was sinful.
Why South Vietnam lost the war?
Oh, there are 2 parts we have to talk. First, in Saigon. In Saigon government war room, there was a spy, the Phan Vu. He was there. He listened to everything. He get everything. And he sent back to Hanoi Politburo. And my teacher told Larry Bergman that Phan Vu send them everything, every document. Second, they give all phones and distorted story to American journalists so they can send them to Washington D.C. and they poison the American public opinion. So there is anti-Vietnam War rally, anti-Vietnam War demonstration. So the atmosphere about Vietnam is very poison. Nobody have Vietnam anymore. So the election in 1974, the majority of Democrats in the House and in Senate. In the House, 199, but the Republican GOP only 144. In the Senate, I remember that 61 Democrat and 39 GOP. So they cut off all military and financial aid to South Vietnam. In this time, the Soviet Union, the Red China, supply North Vietnam all kind of ammunition. Tank T-54, cannon, and anti-aircraft artillery, and local sapper, and infantry too. They went down to the south. The South government have a gun but no bullets. I think that why I don't know the Democrat abandoned the South Vietnam. And I remember there's a trial. That's Jesus Christ of Nazareth trial. And Roman Pilate washed their hand. So in 1974, the Democrat washed their hand about Vietnam. More than 500,000 people in South Vietnam died in the jail, in the Reeducation jail, in the Southeast Vietnam Sea.
I heard a lot of bitterness from you right now. Do you hate anyone because of what they done to Vietnam War?
Hate? What for? No hate anyone. That's the fate, I think, it's the fate of South Vietnam. Theo has a lot of mistake. He has done him a lot of mistake. And President Johnson too. President Johnson sent 500,000 of soldiers into Da Nang, but he didn't figure out a plan B. What means the plan B? The plan B concerned about POW. How to take them back. To take them back, the President Johnson had to negotiate with Hanoi. And you see, the Afghanistan war, the Iraq war, there is no problem of POW. That's a problem of mine. You see that? That's why, that's what I think about it. Theo have made a big mistake. He knew in 1972, after the signing of Paris, he knew that the American will abandon the South Vietnam. So, the fate of the South Vietnamese belonged to the South Vietnamese. Why didn't he ask the South people Vietnamese decide their fate? They hide this decision so he can get out safely out of Vietnam before everything collapsed. That's what I think.
Well, thank you very much for your time, and you done a lot of work and research and everything for the interview, and you bring a lot of material and as well as the photo. I special thanks to all your effort that you contribute to this movie. Thanks again.
That's my pleasure, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.